Welcome to another episode of Preparing for the Unexpected. I'm your host, Alex Fullick, and as always, we like to talk about things related to business continuity, disaster planning, resilience, crisis management, emergency management, and anything that can be relatable to those subjects. Speaking of which, if there is a specific topic you'd like us to talk about on the show or be a guest on the show, please feel free, go to the homepage for the show on the Voice America site. There is a button underneath the graphic that says send host an email or something to those, something along that lines. I do get all emails and I do respond to everything, and we'll see about addressing your subject or getting you on the show. Now, today's topic, as many of you know, I've said it many times, I am an avid reader. I love to read for entertainment, knowledge, and I came across a book some time ago just by its title. When I tell you, you'll obviously know why. I saw it and went, oh, I got to read that, of course. And when I got through it, I thought, this is really interesting. I wonder if I had a shot at getting the author here, because the author is a New York Times bestselling author of Hardwiring Happiness and Buddha's Brain. And I have Buddha's Brain actually on my bookshelf as well. So I'd like to welcome to the show the author of Resilient, How to Grow an Unshakable Core of Calm, Strength, and Happiness. I'd like to welcome Dr. Rick Hanson. Rick, welcome to the show.
Alex, thank you. And your topics are near and dear to me at a lot of different levels. I'm a psychologist, as you know, so I tend to focus on preparing for the unexpected at the individual level. But there's a lot that people can do at that level, as you well know. So I'm looking forward to talking about it with you.
Well, great. I'm really happy that you're able to join us today. Like I said, a New York Times bestselling author. I just thought, you know what? I'll just take a shot. You never know.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm really happy to have you here.
That's
Can
right.
you take I know you mentioned you're a psychologist. Could you take a minute or two and just kind of introduce yourself and, what you do and how you got to where you are?
Yeah. So I'm a clinical psychologist and a senior fellow of UC Berkeley's Greater Good Science Center, which kind of indicates my interest. I'm particularly interested in how people can establish themselves in resilient well-being through growing resources inside, psychological strengths, resources such as grit, gratitude, and compassion. And beginning about 15 years ago, I began writing a series of books, and I'm particularly interested, I would say, in the intersection of three lineages, psychology, brain science, and the contemplative wisdom that you find around the world, people who sometimes are called the Olympic athletes of mental training. So when you put all those three together, right, brain science, psychology, and meditative practice, it gives you a ton of insight into your own mind and lots of ways to help yourself and other people.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Oh, and I understand you just released a brand new book, right?
Yeah, it's got a kind of a funny title. I took a swing for it. It's called Neurodharma. It's not religious. Basically, the subtitle explains it: New Science, Ancient Wisdom, and 7 Practices of the Highest Happiness. And lately, like we're recording this in the middle of May 2020, as you know, obviously, and we're all dealing with this pandemic right now. So it's interesting that even when, or perhaps especially when, things are at their worst, at their lowest, I think we can learn a lot from people who've pursued life at its highest, the people who've made it their life's work to develop the most fundamental inner peace, lovingness, wisdom, inner strength, and contentment and well-being. So that's what that book's about. How can we observe people around the world, the saints and sages, teachers, people known, people not so well known, how can we reverse engineer their state of being and explore what is actually happening inside their brain in the circuits and the different neurochemical processes that are the basis for this fundamentally unshakable core of resilient well-being that clearly they demonstrate? How can we develop more of that ourselves? So it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool book.
Well, congratulations on the new book. And that's kind of why I wanted to get you on the show, because And I think the timing has worked out fine. I know I
Yeah.
originally reached out quite some time ago, and we set the date for today to record. However, as you put it, we're in the middle of COVID-19 pandemic. So I find this self-well-being and resilient rather interesting now, because a lot of what I used to talk about on the show, or, well, I still do, but
Yeah.
tended to come from an organizational perspective, and how you keep that going. But really now it's an individual level of that people need to look at resiliency. It's not just organizational now. So I think it's rather interesting that I got you right in the middle of this.
Oh, it's kind of cool. And isn't it interesting that, I'm in my 60s, so I've kind of came of age in the 1960s a while ago as a kid, and then I went to college in the early 70s. And there's a way in which I think that happiness or positive emotions or just well-being, ordinary well-being, gets a bad rap. It gets knocked as something sort of superficial, or, well, that's for kids or people when they retire, or maybe even that 1 week a year when you go fishing, right? You're on vacation.
Right.
But in fact, as tons of research has shown, ordinary, just down-to-earth, genuine positive emotions like gratitude or feeling friendly with another person, or they like you, or a sense of satisfaction or accomplishment when you finish something, these positive emotions that are part of a larger sense of well-being actually make us stronger. They strengthen the immune system. They protect the heart against illness and trauma. They bring us closer to other people. They make us more ambitious because we're more willing to go for it. It's funny. I think sometimes that if a big pharmaceutical company could patent happiness, let's say the blue pill, the one that makes you happy, I guess. I forget which one it was in the Matrix, the blue pill or the red pill. Anyway, if they could patent it just in terms of pure medical benefits, the ways in which well-being is good for physical health and longevity, boy, we'd be seeing ads for the blue pill, right, every night on television.
Right. Well, you bring up an interesting point, that well-being, so to speak, this mindset, it's either for kids or for the elderly.
Yeah. Right.
However, right now with COVID-19, it's everybody. So
yep.
I'm wondering how or if COVID-19 has really changed that, feeling of well-being, and if you're seeing that.
Yeah. Well, I think you're really getting at the crux of resilience, because if we're dealing with things while feeling terrible inside, that's a limitation on our actual resilience. And what I think we can find in people who are dealing with the worst of it all, relief workers, frontline workers, they're tired, they're exhausted, but they can still retain a sense deep down inside, of meaning, of purpose, of service, connection with others, internalizing the gratitude of their patients' day, the gratitude of their families, pushing a broom at 3 a.m. down a hospital corridor. I think about the people that are doing that, who are the doctors are the tip of the iceberg, really, in the healthcare system. It's so many other people that really keep it all going, right? They talk about and they can feel a sense of meaning and purpose and well-being there. I think about it in ordinary ways. When our kids were little, we'd walk them up and down the hall when they were, crying 3 a.m. And it wasn't a happy time, but it was deeply fulfilling in a lot of ways. So it is possible. It is possible, and it's more than possible. It's useful to keep finding what it is that feeds you and protects you deep down inside yourself, so that you can sustain some underlying sense of happiness, contentment, purpose, inner peace, and even love, no matter how bad things are. Sure, there'll be moments where you're totally shocked, totally enraged, totally in pain. Yeah. You had a shocking loss, your back is killing you. There are these moments where that just crowds out everything else, right? But most of the time, even when things really suck, you're exhausted and fried and stressed, deep down in your core, you can still feel a fundamental happiness.
Do you think that's with COVID-19 right now that is going to change for many people, because they are, on one hand, they're spending time at work, working from home, I should say, spending more time with their families. And because they can't see some of their families and friends and coworkers, that there's a way, I can't just turn to my friend and start chatting. I have to make this extra effort. Do you think that COVID-19 is going to make that happen for people?
Well, I think you're getting at a really important point. You probably know this model in which basically a person's course or a community or a corporation's or even a country's course over time is the result of three factors. Just three factors. Just three. Challenges, vulnerabilities, and resources. Right? Challenges like COVID-19, all right? Landing on different vulnerabilities. Some people, let's say, are vulnerable to feeling rejected or abandoned when they have to live more by themselves or more isolated, say. Or a country could have hollowed out its public health system so that when finally a plague comes, as plagues eventually always do, right, that the country's not very well prepared for it. So those are vulnerabilities. And then resources are what we mount to deal with the challenge. So an individual at home, let's say, living in close quarters, maybe worried about money, and very understandably, maybe worried about their own physical health, maybe worried about others, their aging aunt, or perhaps someone in their own family, and very, very immediately, how's their health going to be with all this, right? So those are challenges. Then the question becomes, all right, as the challenges go up, so must the resources. So maybe I could turn it back a little bit here and ask you, what do you find are some of the key resources, psychological strengths, psychological resources that help people when they're facing a real challenge to resilience, when the unexpected comes, let's say. They're stuck at home, maybe they're anxious, right, or stressed. What do you think are some of the key resources that help people when they're anxious or stressed and that maybe they can focus on more these days?
Well, for me, I know, friends, family, and, those are external. Internally, I also look at, doing a puzzle, playing my guitar or my synthesizer, finding different ways to calm myself, and, bounce ideas off of other people and things like that.
Yeah. So that's a great example. So as a psychologist, I would add, or just build on what you said, that there's some classic inner strengths that help people retain their well-being even when they're being threatened, as we are right now, or dealing with real issues. So, for example, one is literally just to relax while you exhale. The heart rate naturally slows as we exhale. The so-called parasympathetic branch of the nervous system gets involved when we exhale, and it's the complement to the sympathetic branch of the nervous system, the fight or flight stress response branch. So the parasympathetic branch has a funny kind of jokey name for it, too, as the rest and digest system. It's that part of the nervous system that handles resting and digesting. So just exhaling calms us down, and then over time, we can develop greater trait calm, trait relaxation inside us that we achieve, we acquire, we develop it through repeatedly having states of calm, such as states of relaxation, that we repeatedly internalize, gradually altering neural structure and function so that we become progressively calm, let's say, with a sense of calm strength deep down inside as our fundamental way of being, our fundamental way of experiencing life and dealing with it. So that's one. Another is to pull up the memory, the feeling in your body of being strong, of enduring, getting through things. It might be a time for me, I've done a lot of rock climbing where you pulled over an overhang, or maybe it was a time that you just, and also in my case, you just stood by the bedside of a beloved relative for long periods of time in the hospital, just being there, enduring the fact that your legs hurt, your feet hurt, your back hurts, you're tired, and you're just going to keep standing there because that's what you do. So we can get in touch with the essentially the emotional memory, the somatic memory of the times that we've been strong and we got through tough times ourselves. And so then by getting in touch with that feeling inside, kind of calling it up, almost like getting a song playing in the inner iPod of that way of feeling, well, then we're more resourced. We're more able to deal with the challenge right now that's, let's say, making us anxious. So those are two right off the top. And I had to say one more real fast. Just like you said, the sense of friends and family, the feeling that others are in this too, common humanity, right? We're in this together. They're grappling with it too. We can take heart from their efforts, frontline workers and people just doing all kinds of things to keep things going right now. We can take heart in their example. We can also find heart in the feeling of the people in our lives who see us, who care about us, who remember us, who like us, who even love us. So those, and as we do that, as we bring in the felt sense of others who care about us, that too, research shows, reduces anxiety and helps us cope better.
I've noticed with COVID-19 that, I know we have the physical distancing, but I think the social aspect has actually brought a lot of people together, with technology that's available. So I don't like to say social distancing because, I'm talking to my brothers more often, I'm talking to my mom more often, And
I know, it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. I find it rather, and they're 1,000 miles away from me, but yet I feel closer to them now than I did before.
Mm-hmm. And I think you're pointing as something that we can do. I mean, that's another way that the current moment really challenges us because it makes us understandably feel helpless, immobilized, right? So much we can't change. You can't. There's an invisible virus, right? There's an enemy that's breached the gate that's inside our village, the country, the world as a whole. It's here. What are we going to do about it? And there's a lot of limitation in what we can do about it. Plus, it's very strange because whatever we do today won't really show up, particularly in terms of public health results for another couple weeks. So it's all delayed. It's very weird to deal with. That's why it's so important, kind of like you said, focus on what we can do. Focus on where we do have agents, a sense of efficacy, because humans are, like dogs, are very vulnerable to acquiring what's called learned helplessness. It's really easy to make people feel defeated, sense of futility, why bother, entrapment, despair. That's a slippery slope and a really dangerous one to just even begin to start sliding down. That's why I think it's so important to keep focusing, especially when there's a lot that's out of your control, on the little silly things that you do have control over. Do you want another cup of coffee, right? Do you say those words to your partner or not? Do you help yourself keep listening without interrupting? Do you look out the window? Do you plant a flower because at least you can do something? Do you scratch your cat? At least there's something you can do inside your own mind. Do you shift how you look at it? Do you take action inside your own mind, not just out there in the world? And as we take action in that way, as we feel that sense of agency, I think it's really important to slow down and take in the good, right? Help that experience really sink in so that you build up the trait sense that you are more like a hammer and, less like a nail.
Yes. And on that note, we've come to the end of our first segment. We're talking with New York Times bestselling author, Dr. Rick Hanson, and his book, Resilient. We'll be right back. If you liked that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.